Hi guys, it's Pastor Doug here, and I'm ready to share with you another Jack tale. Hope that you have been enjoying these. This one's called Old Bluebeard. Now, it happened a long time ago whenever Jack and Will and his brother Tom was all living in the cabin together. His mama and daddy had gone off, and so it was just the three boys. They still had everything to do around the house. Why, Jack, he had to take care of all the cleaning and chopping and getting the stuff done on the inside and working in the garden and hauling the water and all those kinds of things. And Will, he'd worked in the barn and with the animals and everything. And then, Tom, he was out in the fields. Everybody had their chores to do. But since everyone was working there and it was close to harvest time, they all needed to be out in the field. And so after they got their morning chores done, they'd all go out there. But they found out pretty quick when they got to the end of the day, they hadn't had no food to eat. While their mama was used to be the one cooking for them, they didn't have anything like that. And so they made a plan. They decided that one of them would stay in and cook while the other ones was out in the field. And then when they came back, they'd all be able to have something to eat together. Why, Tom, being the one that oldest and brightest, decided that he'd just take the first night, and Will and Jack could go work in the field. So that's what they did. They went out and worked, and as they worked, they just thought to themselves, "Oh, Tom's a good cook. He'll get us up something good." While on their way back from the field, they was thinking they was a hungry, but they didn't know what had happened. Well, when Tom was a-cooking, he was cooking up some biscuits and he was boiling up some beans and he got some ham out and got it to roasting on the fire in their cabin, and it was a smelling good and looking good, and there was an old knock on the door. Why, Tom went over to it and it just went open, and there was this great big old man with his long blue beard. Why, he was just scared to death of him, ran into the back and up into the loft and hid from him. That old man just come right in. He went on to the food. He just ate up all the biscuits. He ate up all the beans. He ate all the ham. He didn't leave nothing but bones, and went on out the door and gone. Why, by the time that Will and Jack got there was nothing left. Why, they looked around, and whenever Tom realized it was just the boys, why, he come down out of the loft and says, "Oh, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. So blue-bearded man come in here, ate everything up, so I ain't got nothing to give to you, and I didn't get to eat." They just looked at him and said, "Whatever. You've been lazing around. We've been working in the field. You ain't been doing nothing for us, and so I don't know what we're going to do. You have to work in the field tomorrow." And Will said, "I'll take care of this. I'm not lazy. I'll cook up something." So the next day, whenever they were out in the fields, sure enough, Will got to cooking. He made both cornbread and biscuits both. He cooked up some beans, and he got some good griddle going there, made cakes as well. He got all kinds of vegetables, put some corn on there to roast over the fire, go along with that beans, and he got him some old beef they'd had dried out, put it down there in that sauce, and just started to soften it up into a nice stew. And he was ready to eat when there was that knock on the door. He opened up, and sure enough, there's this blue-bearded man standing there. Scared him half to death. Never seen anything like that. Went running into the back and up to the loft where they's a-sleeping at, and sure enough, that old man just come right on in, just started a-eating everything up. By the time he was done, he was nothing left, and he took off. By the time that Tom and Jack got back, sure enough, Will come down and says, "Oh, it's just you. I was scared to death. Tom was right. There's this blue-bearded man coming in here, and he's just eating everything up." Jack just looked at the both of them and said, "I see what's going on here. You two are in it together. Why, you just both lazy bones. That's what you's all." And he didn't have nothing to do. And so Jack said, "I'll stay home tomorrow, and I'll take care of it." Why, when he got to cooking that afternoon, he made biscuits and cornbread, and he also made a big old batch of gravy to sop them all into. He was working real hard. He got some greens to cooking to go along with the beans, and had all kinds of corn and It was just going to be a feast of a meal. They hadn't had much to eat in 3 days nohow. And sure enough, when he had just about had it off, there's this knock on the door. Why, when Jack went over there and opened it up, sure enough, there was this old blue-bearded man. But Jack had heard about it, so he thought he'd try something different than running and hiding. He just said, "Hello, Uncle, come on in. I've been expecting you. Why, I just got dinner ready. Won't you come in here and get you something to eat? Why, I've got all kinds of good stuff here." And the old man just looked at him and said, "Oh, no, no, no. I just stopped by here to light my pipe." And he said, "Oh, well then come on in. Let me do that for you." So Jack went down there and got some coal out of the fire and got it up there to his pipe and got it to smoking real good for him. And then the man just thanked Jack profusely, and then he went on out. Why, Jack started to following him. Why, he started to follow him wherever that smoke went. It led him way down into the deep part of the forest. And while he was away, Will and Tom come back in. They seen all that food and didn't see Jack, and they knew what had happened. They knew that old blue-bearded man must have just eaten him up. And so they just wailed and wailed, and they just ate their sorrows away. And so by the time that Jack got back from finding out where that old blue-bearded man had gone to, there wasn't nothing to eat. Here's his brothers Tom and Will just a-weeping and a-crying and a-eating. And by the time that Jack got there, he just looked at them and couldn't believe it. He says, "You're not going to believe it. I followed that old man. He went way down deep into the woods, and he went down into an old hole. And I think we ought to go down there and see where he's at." His brothers didn't know what to think about this, but since it was Jack, they didn't mind going along or carrying the rope or letting him down into the hole, but they didn't want to have nothing to do with it. So the next day, they got themselves a-going. They went on down there and they cooked everything up. When that old man showed up, sure enough, they started to saying, "Oh, come on in, come on in. We want you here. We've been waiting for you. We got good food for you." And that old man said, "No, no, no, no. I just by to stop my pipe, get my pipe all lit up." And he went on his way. They all followed him down there, carrying all they needed to go out after him. Why, when they got down there, they tied an old bucket on the end of the rope after that old man had gone there, and they just let Jack down for a little ways, and whenever he pulled on it, they pulled him back up. He says, "Oh, you're not going to believe it, not going to believe it. It goes right on down to a whole nother world. Why, we're going to have to tie all those ropes we carried down here one after the other and just keep a-letting me down." And they said, "Okay, we'll do that for you. Whenever you give a big tug, though, we'll pull it on up." And so they let them all the way down. Why, they just went down and they went down and they went down. Why, when he got all the way down to the ground, Jack looked around himself and there was a little old cabin not too far away. Jack went right up to it, and whenever he opened the door, there was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen in his whole life. Just a-standing there saying, oh, I thought you were the old blue-bearded man. Just nearly scared me to death. He's got us all trapped down here and we can't get away." And Jack said, "Oh, I can help you get away. My brother's got a rope down here, and we can get you in the bucket and get you out of here." And she says, "Oh, that'd be good. But, you'll go over there. You got to get my sister. Why, my sister's even prettier than I am, and you got to go get her too." And Jack said, "Oh, I'll be glad to." She says, but wait. "You'll forget all about me once you see my sister, and so I need to give you something so that you remember who I am." And Jack said, "Oh, how could I ever forget you? You're the most beautiful." He says, "Oh, I'm telling you, that's the way it works down here." And so that's what happened. She took out of her pocket a little old ring and put it on Jack's finger. And he says, "Now, Jack, that's a wishing ring. Now, you remember that wishing ring, and if you get in any trouble, it'll help get you out." Jack says, "Oh, I ain't got to worry about that. We just need to get you out of here so that I can go ahead and get your sister out of here." So Jack went over and put that girl in the bucket and yanked on it, and his brothers just started pulling her up. Why, they thought that it was going to be old Jack, and when they seen that girl come out, they couldn't believe themselves. She was the most beautiful girl them boys had ever seen, and Tom and Will went to fighting over her right then and there. The girl was the one that put the bucket back down, and that got their attention, and so they let it all the way back down so they could get Jack out of there. But in the meantime, Jack had gone over to the next little old house and found her sister. Why, when she got there, she couldn't believe it either. She says, oh, we got to get going fast. That old blue-bearded man down here, he'll get us and he'll trap us and we'll be here forever. We've been down here for ages and days anyways. There's just no way for us to get out. Says, oh, I'll take care of that. I really will. You just come follow me. I'll get you out of here. Why, she got him over there and got him in that old bucket and yanked on it, and they pulled him up, and sure enough, when she got up to the top, they looked at her and looked at the other one. She was sure enough prettier, and Will and Tom went to fighting over there, and they knew what was going to happen. They said, well, we got one girl for you and one girl for me. We just don't know what to do. And then they thought if they put the bucket back down, why, they might get Jack back. There's no telling what's going to happen there. And while Jack was a-waiting and a-waiting for that bucket to come up out of the sky, it never did. Why, he didn't know what to do. And by that time, the old blue-bearded man had noticed Jack, started coming up to him. Jack went to running as fast as he could, but that old man could go even faster. He hid in trees and he could go and find him. He went around rocks and the old man went over them. He went all over the place. He did everything he could. And finally, in the end, that old man threw a sack over Jack and captured him. Took Jack back to one of his cabins, put him in an old pen where he couldn't get out, and told Jack he's just going to fatten him up down there so he can make him a good meal, because he's awful mad at Jack for getting rid of them two girls, and why, he hadn't eaten in a couple of days and he's getting hungry. Jack didn't know what he was going to do. He was just scared to death. He said, oh, I am the most miserable boy there ever was. Here I am in a world under the ground. Here I am trying to help, and I do nothing but get myself in trouble. I don't know where to do or what to do. Oh, I'm just worried to death, just worried to death. Sometimes when you get worried about stuff, you start fiddling around with things, and Jack didn't even realize that he was fiddling around with that ring on his finger. And he just started thinking to himself and saying, oh, I wish I wasn't down here and all trapped. Oh, I wish I was with the prettiest girl there ever did was, and I wish I was just up there with her and with out of all these troubles. I just don't know what to do. And whenever Jack opened his eyes back up, because he'd been wishing on that wishing ring, why, he was standing right on his porch, right next to that girl that was so beautiful he couldn't believe it, right next to Will and next to Tom. Why, he couldn't believe what had happened to him. Why, he started celebrating and singing and grabbing his brothers and telling them how good it was to see them, and he couldn't believe that they had something terrible must have happened to him, because there's no way that they would just leave him down there. Of course, they didn't say that that's exactly what they'd done. And then he started talking to them girls, and they had that wonderful time to get to knowing and visiting with each other. And that's whenever Jack told them girls that they had a family somewhere that had been awful worried about them, and they needed to get themselves back home so that they could enjoy their own families and get to know them. And while they was the most beautiful things he'd ever seen, they needed to get back where they belong with their family. And that's exactly what they did. Will and Tom couldn't believe it. Oh, Jack, you done let them go. We'd never seen girls like that. What are you doing? What are you talking about? He says, oh, don't worry about it. Good things will come to us when you do good things. That's the way it goes around these places. You know that, boys. Don't worry about that. We'll let them go. We'll let them have a good time being with their family, and we'll get taken care of too. Now, I tell you that story because sometimes we get ourselves in a terrible mess, and it seems like the more we help out with people, the worse things are. But whenever we put our hope in Jesus and we put our trust in Him and we let our wishes be made in His name, He takes care of us and He sees us through the most difficult times, and He will release us from the prisons we make that keep us from doing the things that God has for us. And whenever we get released, that's when we need to keep on loving those people around us and making sure they have the best life has to offer too.